I'm Emily, I'm 28, and the night my family decided I was trash, they literally threw my entire life into the garbage. I pulled into the driveway thinking about color palettes for a new client, still wearing my cafe apron, and for a second, I wondered why there were phones pointed at the front lawn. Then I saw my stuff. My clothes were spilling out of black trash bags. My sketchbooks were torn open. My old laptop lay on top of everything with rain starting to drip onto the keyboard like someone had spit on it and walked away. My mom was standing there in the middle of it all, holding her phone up, talking to a live stream like she was hosting a show. You're 28 years old, living in my basement like a parasite. Get out of my house today. She didn't even look at me when she said it. She looked at the comments. My brother laughed loud enough for the mic to catch it as he kicked one of my bags so hard it rolled across the grass. My sister spun her phone around, giving her followers a full tour of my life being tossed away piece by piece. Someone across the street actually cheered. I didn't scream, I didn't beg. I just walked past all of them, picked up what I could save with shaking hands, loaded it into my car, and drove off without saying a word. At that moment, they thought they'd finally gotten rid of the family loser. What they didn't know was that 6 months later, they'd be blowing up my phone with 70 desperate messages begging me to talk to them. If you want to know how the parasite in the basement ended up holding everything they cared about in her hands, keep listening. 6 months before that night on the lawn, my life actually looked pretty normal. At least from the outside, I had my own tiny one-bedroom apartment 20 minutes away, a beat-up silver Honda Accord that rattled when I turned the AC on, and a full-time job as a graphic designer at a mid-sized agency in Dallas. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. I paid my own rent, my own bills, bought my own groceries, and I was proud of that. Then the economy tanked. Clients started pulling campaigns, budgets vanished, and one Friday afternoon, my manager called me into a conference room with that tight apologetic smile everyone posts about on LinkedIn. "It's the recession," she said, like that was supposed to make it hurt less. 2 weeks later, I was standing in my empty apartment staring at a U-Haul full of boxes, doing the math on my savings, and realizing it didn't stretch as far as I'd hoped. Moving back in with my mom was supposed to be temporary, just until I found another decent design job. We agreed I would pay her $350 a month to stay in the basement, plus grab extra shifts at a local cafe while I applied for work. On paper, it sounded reasonable. In real life, it felt like shrinking. My mom, Helen, loved telling people she had taken her grown daughter back in like she was rescuing a stray. At church, she'd sigh and say, "Emily's back home for a while." Poor thing. The economy really broke her. But when we were alone, the story sounded different. "You're almost 30. She'd mutter loud enough for me to hear as she slammed cabinet doors. Living downstairs like a teenager who never grew up. My brother Ryan would drop by for dinner, still in his greasy work shirt from the auto shop, clap me on the shoulder, and joke. "So, how's the artist in residence doing? Any paying work yet, or just more doodles?" My sister Lisa floated around filming everything on her phone, chirping at her followers about Sunday family dinner and cozy moments, angling the camera so I was always half cut out of frame like I was just part of the background. The basement wasn't terrible, but it didn't feel like home. I worked on my laptop at a wobbly folding table, updating my portfolio, sending out resumes, squeezing in design gigs that paid insultingly low just to keep my software subscriptions alive. Every time I handed my mom an envelope of cash for the month, she'd flip through it like a landlord checking for counterfeit bills and say something like, "Don't forget the electricity you use isn't free," as if I'd been showering with the garden hose. Still, I told myself it was temporary. I'd scroll through job listings late at night, imagining the day I'd walk up those basement stairs with a new offer and a move-out date. One morning, that email finally came. A small tech startup in Austin loved my portfolio and wanted to bring me on as a remote freelance designer with the possibility of going full-time. The rate was more than I'd ever made at the cafe and almost close to what I'd had at the agency. My hands were literally shaking as I read the contract. I went upstairs, heart pounding, and found my mom in the kitchen wiping down the counters. "Mom," I said, trying not to smile too hard. "I think I just landed a really good freelance job. It's steady work, decent pay." This could actually get me back on my feet. She didn't scream, didn't hug me, didn't even ask any questions. She just paused, sponge in midair, and said, "Freelance isn't a real job, Emily. Don't get too excited. People like you need stability." Then she went back to scrubbing like I told her the weather. I laughed it off, but something about the way she said, "people like you," lodged in my chest and stayed there. Have you ever told someone your good news and felt for just a split second like they were annoyed you might actually do well without them? I tried to ignore that feeling. I signed the contract, circled the start date on my calendar, and told myself that whatever my mom thought didn't matter. I had a plan. I had a way out. What I didn't know was that before I could take that next step, she was already planning a very public performance to make sure everyone believed I was the problem, not her.